You know that feeling when you want to get smart on something fast? Like you need the core knowledge without getting lost in the weeds?
Hmm.
That's what we're all about here, taking a deep dive into fascinating stuff and pulling out the essential insights just for you.
Exactly. We sift through the information so you don't have to.
Hmm.
Today, our focus is on something incredibly valuable,
Hmm.
how to become a more effective thinker.
Okay.
And the cool thing is, the principles we're exploring aren't just theoretical. They come from real-world efforts to sharpen minds in demanding fields.
That's right. Our deep dive today is inspired by discussions around reforming PhD programs like how do you really train researchers to think critically?
Yeah, how do you actually do that?
And it turns out the answers to that question are like secret weapons for anyone who wants to tackle tough problems, whether you're strategizing at work or just trying to make sense of, a complex situation.
What's fascinating here is that the very skills we aim to cultivate in advanced research, the ability to analyze deeply, to identify flaws, to innovate, these are the same skills that drive success in business, in tech, really in any field where clear thinking is paramount.
Right. So we've basically boiled down the key ideas into 7 core principles. Think of them as your personal toolkit for supercharging your thinking.
Okay, 7 principles.
We're diving into becoming a master error detective,
Hmm.
exploring the wild world of science, the real way,
Okay, I like the sound of that one.
being super careful with your experiments, thinking about how your work helps everyone, talking so everyone understands your awesome ideas,
Crucial.
mixing and matching your brain power, and finally, making things better, not just fixing what's broken.
That's quite a list. And while these might sound a bit academic, their impact is anything but. It's about taking the fundamental rigor of high-level inquiry and applying it directly to the challenges, well, the challenges you face every day.
Okay, let's get started then. Principle number 1, becoming a master error detective. What's the core idea we need to grasp here?
At its heart, it's about developing a sharp eye for flaws, not just in other people's arguments, but critically in your own thinking, too.
Okay.
It's about actively seeking out logical fallacies, hidden biases, shaky assumptions, all that stuff that can lead you astray.
So for you listening, why should you want to become this master error detective? What's the payoff in your day-to-day?
Oh, the benefits are significant. Firstly, it sharpens your decision-making
Mm-hmm.
massively. You'll be much better at spotting potential weaknesses, pitfalls in plans before they cause
We're
problems.
seeing the holes.
Exactly. Secondly, your own reasoning becomes more robust because you're proactively guarding against, logical traps.
Okay.
And thirdly, it supercharges your problem solving. Helps you quickly identify the root causes of why things aren't working.
And what's the downside if we don't develop this detective mindset? What are we risking?
The risks are pretty considerable, actually. You might find yourself persuaded by ideas that sound good, but are, well, fundamentally flawed.
Mm-hmm.
You're more likely to make mistakes in your own judgments, your own projects. And ultimately, you could waste valuable resources, time, money, energy, on initiatives built on shaky ground.
Yeah, that sounds like something we definitely want to avoid. So who in the U.S. business world is really good at this? Are there examples of companies that act like master error detectives?
Well, think about Google. Their post-mortem analysis after projects isn't just about saying, oops, that went wrong.
Right.
It's a deep dive into the decision-making process that led to those outcomes. The real learning comes from dissecting the thinking.
Right, right. So it's not just about blaming, it's about understanding the missteps in logic. What other examples come to mind?
Cybersecurity firms are another great illustration. They use these things called red team exercises.
Oh, yeah, where they try to hack themselves.
Exactly. They intentionally try to find vulnerabilities and weaknesses in their own systems. They're proactively looking for errors before the bad guys do.
So it's like they're stress testing their own defenses to make them stronger.
Precisely. And then you have companies like Shell, using scenario planning. They explore various possible futures and rigorously challenge their underlying assumptions.
Hmm.
Helps them uncover potential strategic weaknesses way down the line.
Interesting. Proactively trying to find what could go wrong. Okay, so on the flip side, what are some common mistakes we see from companies that aren't employing this master error detective approach?
Well, a frequent error is simply ignoring why projects failed, or maybe offering superficial explanations.
Yeah.
Without a deep analysis, they're just likely to repeat the same mistakes.
Makes sense.
Another big one is overconfidence, like in their security,
Hmm.
without actively and continuously testing for weaknesses. They operate under this kind of false sense of security.
Risk.
Very. And finally, a rigidity in strategic thinking. Failing to question core assumptions that often leaves them vulnerable. Totally blindsided by unexpected shifts in the market.
Okay, so for the listener, how can they start to cultivate this master error detective skill in their own work or business? What's a practical step?
I think the key is fostering a culture of intellectual humility and questioning. Encourage yourself, encourage your team to constantly ask why and what if.
Okay.
Maybe implement practices like devil's advocate exercises, where someone is specifically tasked with critiquing a plan. Find the holes.
Like assigning someone to poke holes in it.
Exactly. And a really powerful technique is the pre-mortem. Before you even launch something new, brainstorm all the reasons it might fail. This proactive error detection can be incredibly insightful.
A pre-mortem. I like that. All right, let's move on to our second super secret, exploring the wild world of science, the real way.
Yeah,
This sounds like we're getting a peek behind the curtain.
exactly. The real way just acknowledges that scientific progress, and honestly progress in many fields, is often, well, messy. It's non-linear, iterative, full of surprises. It's not always that smooth path from A to B, hypothesis to result. There are limitations, unexpected data pops up, even, lucky accident serendipity.
So understanding this less than perfect reality, how does that actually benefit us in our own work?
It provides several crucial benefits, I think. Firstly, it fosters more realistic expectations. You understand that setbacks, weird outcomes, they're a normal part of tackling complex stuff. Makes you more resilient.
Okay, so less likely to get discouraged.
Precisely. Secondly, it cultivates greater adaptability. When things inevitably don't go as planned, you're better equipped to pivot, to adjust your strategy. And thirdly, it opens you up to more creative solutions because you start recognizing the potential value in those unexpected findings. You're not just filtering them out.
And what's the danger of clinging to a very idealized, textbook view of how progress should work?
Well, if you believe progress should always be straightforward, you're just way more likely to get discouraged by setbacks. You might even abandon promising ideas too early.
Yay.
You could also completely overlook valuable unexpected discoveries because you're too fixated on your initial plan, your initial assumptions.
Tunnel vision.
Yeah, exactly. And you might develop this sort of unwarranted confidence in your results without really acknowledging their limitations.
So which U.S. companies seem to really get this? Who embraces this wild world of science idea?
You see it a lot in tech, especially companies with a big innovation focus, like Netflix. They often embrace a fail-fast culture. They run tons of experiments, knowing full well many won't succeed, but they see every attempt as a learning opportunity. It fuels their innovation.
It's like they're comfortable with a certain amount of, messiness in the pursuit of breakthroughs.
That's a good way to put it. Pharmaceutical companies, too, like Pfizer, despite how regulated their work is, they understand drug development is long, often unpredictable.
Yeah, definitely not linear.
Right. They invest hugely in R&D, but they're also prepared to cut their losses on projects that just aren't showing promise based on the messy reality of the data.
It's about that willingness to pivot.
Exactly. And then think about retailers like Amazon. They're constantly analyzing unexpected patterns in customer behavior. These unforeseen trends might lead to entirely new product lines or strategies that, well, they weren't part of the original plan at all.
So where do competitors often stumble by not accepting this more fluid reality?
One common pitfall is punishing experimentation. Companies that penalize teams for projects that don't pan out. Well, they create a culture where people are afraid to take risks.
Which kills innovation.
Totally stifles it. Another is succumbing to the sunk cost fallacy. Keep throwing good money after bad just because you've already invested so much.
Right, instead of cutting losses.
Yeah, instead of acknowledging the lack of progress. And finally, just ignoring unexpected shifts in customer preferences. That can make a company irrelevant surprisingly fast as the market evolves.
Okay, so how can we apply this understanding of the real way of progress to our own work? How do we embrace the messiness?
I think it starts with cultivating a mindset that embraces experimentation. See mistakes not as failures, but as learning opportunities, valuable data points. When things don't go as expected, don't just focus on what went wrong. Analyze why it went wrong, sure, but also be really open to any surprising positive outcomes that might have popped up along the way.
Finding the silver lining. Kind of.
Kinda, yeah. Encourage your team to see setbacks as just part of the process, not the end of the world.
Okay, makes sense. So our third super secret, being super careful with your experiments. This sounds like the necessary counterbalance to that wild world idea, bringing in the rigor.
Exactly. It's the other side of the coin. While we acknowledge the path can be messy, that doesn't mean we can afford to be sloppy in how we test our ideas.
Right.
Whether it's a scientific study or a business initiative, precision and reliability in your experiments, they're absolutely essential for generating results you can actually trust.
What are the key advantages, then, of being really meticulous with experiments?
Well, the primary benefit is obvious.
Yeah.
Your findings will be far more accurate, more dependable. You get trustworthy results.
Okay.
This, in turn, lets you solve problems more efficiently because you can pinpoint the real causes of issues, not just symptoms. And ultimately, your decisions rest on much stronger evidence.
And the pitfalls if we cut corners, if we aren't rigorous.
If you're not careful, you risk generating misleading data. Simple as that. And that can lead you to draw totally wrong conclusions.
Which leads to bad decisions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Implementing ineffective solutions, maybe even addressing the wrong problems entirely. And of course, you can waste huge amounts of resources, time, money on experiments that just don't yield meaningful or reliable answers.
So which U.S. companies are known for being particularly rigorous here?
Online platforms like Meta, Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
they're renowned for their sophisticated A/B testing. They meticulously test different versions of features on carefully selected user groups to see what works best before rolling it out widely. It's very controlled, very data-driven.
Letting statistically significant data guide the way.
Precisely. And then you have the pharma companies again, like Moderna. Their rigorous, multi-phase clinical trials show just how critical careful experimentation is, especially when public health is involved.
Absolutely. The stakes are incredibly high there.
They are. And even in retail, think about Target. They use control groups in their marketing campaigns.
How does that work?
Well, it lets them accurately measure how effective a specific promotion is by comparing the behavior of the group who saw it to a similar group who didn't. Isolates the impact.
Okay. So what kinds of mistakes do less careful competitors often make in their experimentation or lack thereof?
Well, a common one is launching new products or features without enough testing. Often leads to user frustration, bugs pop up, stuff that could have been caught earlier,
Yeah, we've all experienced that.
haven't we? Another is relying on limited, unsystematic observations, basically. Anecdotal evidence. My cousin liked it, instead of actual data.
Right. Not very reliable.
Not at all. And finally, companies that don't use those control groups in marketing. They really have no accurate way to know which part of their spending is actually driving results and which is wasted.
So how can we apply this principle of careful experimentation in our own businesses, even if we're not Facebook or Target?
The fundamental principle is universal.
Yeah.
Always test your assumptions before making big changes.
Okay.
For instance, if you're thinking about a new pricing strategy, don't just roll it out everywhere. Try it on a small, representative segment of your customers first.
And compare it to.
Compare it to a similar control group that stays on the old pricing. Even on a smaller scale, using control groups and rigorous testing provides invaluable data, helps you make informed decisions, avoid costly mistakes.
Okay, good practical advice. Let's move to number 4. This one steps back a bit. Thinking about how your work helps everyone. This is getting into the broader societal impact, right?
Exactly. It's about considering the wider ethical, social, environmental consequences of what you do, of your innovations, moving beyond just the immediate goals or profits and thinking about the long-term ripple effects.
What are the upsides for a business or even an individual who adopts this broader perspective?
Well, by considering the wider impact, you can cultivate greater trust and build a much stronger reputation with customers, with stakeholders, with the community.
Trust is huge.
It is. It also encourages developing more sustainable, more responsible solutions that actually benefit society in the long run. And increasingly, companies with a clear sense of purpose, a commitment to social responsibility. They find it easier to attract and keep top talent. People want their work to mean something.
That makes sense. And what are the potential downsides for those who don't consider this broader impact? The risks of a more narrow focus?
Ignoring the wider consequences can lead to pretty serious negative public perception. Potential backlash if your actions are seen as harmful or unethical.
Right, PR nightmares.
Definitely. You also run the risk of causing unintended negative impacts on communities or the environment, things you didn't foresee. And ultimately, this can lead to increased regulatory scrutiny, legal challenges, it can get expensive.
Okay. So which U.S. companies are really known for embodying this principle, thinking about how their work helps everyone?
Patagonia is often the first one people mention. They've deeply integrated environmental sustainability into their core business values, their practices.
Yeah.
It influences everything they do.
Yeah, they're definitely a benchmark for corporate responsibility.
Absolutely. And then you have companies like Ben& Jerry's who've long prioritized fair trade, ethical sourcing for their ingredients, shows a commitment to social impact right through their supply chain.
Hmm.
And many others, like Starbucks with their community programs, are increasingly recognizing they have a role to play in the well-being of the places they operate.
So where do competitors often fall short here? By not adequately considering this wider impact.
Well, we see companies facing huge public criticism, even regulatory action, for neglecting environmental responsibilities.
Yeah.
Happens all the time.
Yeah.
Others have suffered major reputational damage due to, say, exploitative labor practices discovered in their supply chains. And just a general lack of transparency can really erode trust among consumers and stakeholders.
Okay. How can we, as individuals or businesses, better integrate this thinking about the wider impact?
I think the crucial first step is just to consistently ask the question, what is the broader impact of what we're doing?
Just building that question into the process.
Yeah. Actively consider the ethical implications.
Yeah.
How might this affect different groups, not just our immediate customers or shareholders? And increasingly, showing a commitment to social responsibility isn't just, the nice thing to do. It's often a key driver of long-term business success and sustainability. It's good business.
Right. Okay, our fifth super secret shifts focus again. Talking. So everyone understands your awesome ideas. This sounds straightforward, but it's critical, isn't it? All about clear communication.
Absolutely. Having brilliant ideas is only half the battle, maybe less. You need to be able to articulate those ideas clearly, effectively, to all sorts of audiences,
Uh-huh.
including people who don't share your specific expertise, which is often the hardest part.
What are the tangible benefits of being a really clear, effective communicator?
Well, clear communication just fosters better collaboration. Inside teams, across departments,
Mm.
everyone's on the same page.
Reduces misunderstanding.
Exactly. It also significantly enhances your ability to influence others, to get support for your initiatives.
Mm.
And ultimately, it leads to increased buy-in for your ideas because people are just far more likely to embrace what they can actually understand.
And the flip side, what are the potential negative consequences if we struggle to communicate effectively?
Poor communication.
Mm.
It can lead to misunderstandings, confusion, which then leads to errors, wasted effort. It's inefficient.
Mm-hmm.
You might find you just lack support for great ideas if people don't really grasp their value or potential. And you could miss out on valuable opportunities, partners, investors, customers, just because the message didn't land.
Are there any examples of U.S. organizations that really prioritize clear communication, making things understandable?
You're seeing a growing emphasis on plain language initiatives
Yeah.
and government agencies trying to make regulations understandable, even in parts of the financial industry.
Yeah, trying to cut through the jargon.
Exactly, making complex info more accessible. Many companies are also investing heavily in training programs to improve presentation skills, communication skills for their employees.
Right.
And just look at the widespread use of visual aids, infographics, videos across all sorts of sectors. That highlights the need to convey info clearly and concisely.
So where do companies often stumble in their communication? What are the common pitfalls?
Oh, a frequent mistake is just drowning in jargon, using highly technical terms that alienate or confuse anyone who isn't a specialist in that specific field.
Guilty as charged sometimes, I'm sure.
We all can be. Poor internal communication is another big one. It leads to inefficiencies, people working on the same thing without knowing it, even conflicts. And of course, marketing messages that are unclear or confusing, they just fail. They don't resonate.
So what practical steps can we all take to get better at this, communicating our ideas so everyone gets it?
I think practice is key. Practice explaining your ideas in simple, straightforward language. Imagine you're talking to someone completely outside your field.
Like the explain it to your grandma test.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
Use analogies, use real-world examples to make abstract concepts more tangible, more relatable. And just always remember that the ability to communicate clearly is a super valuable, essential skill in pretty much any professional context.
Good advice. Okay, number 6 is about mixing and matching your brain power. This sounds like synergy, bringing diverse perspectives together.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that the really complex, challenging problems often demand drawing upon a variety of different knowledge bases, different skill sets, different perspectives. That's where truly innovative solutions often come from.
The intersection of ideas.
Precisely. It's the principle of synergy in action, combining different types of brain power.
What are the key advantages of doing that, of bringing together these different ways of thinking?
Well, combining diverse fields can spark entirely new, unexpected creative solutions, things you wouldn't have thought of otherwise.
Okay.
It leads to a more comprehensive, more nuanced understanding of complex issues because you're looking at them from multiple angles. And ultimately, it just drives increased innovation, fosters an environment where different skills and thinking styles can interact and build on each other.
And the downsides of sticking to a more homogeneous approach
Yeah.
or staying in silos.
You risk getting stuck
Ah.
in a narrow, limited way of thinking. Restricts your problem solving, leads to maybe incremental improvements, but not real breakthroughs. You might completely miss crucial connections between different areas of knowledge that could spark something big. And ultimately, it can really stifle creativity and hinder innovation. Homogeneous teams often struggle with novelty.
Are there U.S. companies that are particularly good at fostering this mixing and matching?
Companies like Apple are pretty well known for their cross-functional teams. You have people from engineering, design, marketing, other areas, all working closely together right from the start.
Breaking down those silos?
Exactly. Strategic partnerships between companies in seemingly unrelated industries are another great example, leveraging totally different expertise.
Right.
And some really forward-thinking companies, like IBM, for instance, are increasingly hiring people with backgrounds in fields like ethics, philosophy, alongside their traditional tech experts. Brings a much wider range of perspectives to complex challenges, like AI ethics.
That's interesting. So where do competitors often fall short when it comes to this kind of collaborative, diverse thinking?
Oh, we often see companies with highly siloed departments.
Yeah.
Different teams just operate independently, don't really talk or collaborate effectively. Huge missed opportunities for synergy. A lack of external perspectives, another one. Not actively seeking input or partnerships outside their own industry bubble can lead to becoming insular, outdated.
Yeah, navel gazing.
Right. And teams that lack diversity of background, experience, thinking style, they often just struggle to generate truly novel creative ideas. Groupthink can set in.
So how can we encourage this mixing and matching of brain power in our own organizations or even just in our personal projects?
Actively promote collaboration across different teams, across departments, maybe even seek out external partners with complementary skills.
Be intentional about it.
Very intentional. Make a conscious effort to bring together individuals with diverse backgrounds, experiences, ways of thinking. For example, maybe pull someone from finance into a marketing brainstorm or someone from customer service into a product design meeting.
Get those unexpected perspectives.
Exactly. These unexpected combinations can often lead to the most innovative breakthroughs. Don't be afraid to mix it up.
Okay, great. And finally, our seventh super secret, making things better. Not just fixing what's broken. This sounds like it's about a proactive mindset, continuous improvement.
Precisely. It's about shifting from a purely reactive approach, only dealing with problems after they pop up, to a proactive mindset, constantly seeking ways to enhance processes, products, services, even when things seem to be going okay.
What are the key benefits of adopting this proactive, continuous improvement mindset?
Well, it fosters a culture of ongoing growth, ongoing evolution in your business, in your own work. You're much more likely to stay ahead of the competition by proactively adapting.
Not getting complacent.
Right. And it leads to increased efficiency, higher quality, greater customer satisfaction, because you're constantly striving to refine and enhance what you offer.
And the potential negative consequences if we only focus on fixing things when they break, without that proactive element.
You risk stagnation. Falling behind as your business, your skills, whatever, become outdated, less competitive. You'll constantly be in reactive mode, always playing catch-up rather than leading the way. And ultimately, failing to continuously improve can lead to decreased customer loyalty, a decline in performance. You just slowly fade.
Which U.S. companies really exemplify this mindset, continuous improvement as a core value?
Manufacturing giants like Toyota, especially their U.S. operations, are famous for their commitment to Kaizen and lean methodologies.
Right, the small incremental improvements.
Exactly. Emphasizing making those small improvements constantly throughout all processes. Customer-centric companies like Amazon are also great examples. They consistently solicit and, importantly, act upon customer feedback to continuously refine things.
Closing that feedback loop.
Yes. And many large organizations invest significantly in dedicated R&D labs, innovation hubs, specifically to proactively explore new possibilities and drive improvement.
So where do competitors often stumble by not embracing this culture of continuous improvement?
Complacency is a big one. Companies become comfortable with their current success. They fail to adapt to evolving market demands until it's too late.
Resting on their laurels.
Exactly.
Mm.
Others just ignore valuable customer complaints and feedback. They see it as noise, missing crucial opportunities for improvement. And simply a lack of investment in R&D or innovation can leave companies really vulnerable to disruption from more nimble competitors.
Okay, so how can we make this continuous improvement a core part of our own work or within our organizations?
Make it a fundamental value, part of the culture. Regularly review your processes. How can we do this better, faster, smarter?
Mhm.
Actively seek feedback from customers, from employees, and always be looking for opportunities to innovate and improve, no matter how small they seem.
Don't wait for things to break.
Don't wait after every project, every product launch. Take the time to do a thorough review. What went well? What could we do even better next time? It's about fostering a culture where getting better is just the norm, not some special initiative.
So there you have it, our 7 super secrets to thinking big. Becoming a master error detective.
Spotting the flaws.
Exploring the wild world of science the real way.
Embracing the messiness.
Being super careful with your experiments.
Rigor matters.
Thinking about how your work helps everyone.
The bigger picture.
Talking so everyone understands your awesome ideas.
Clarity is key.
Mixing and matching your brain power.
Diverse perspectives.
And making things better, not just fixing what's broken.
Always improving.
Yeah.
And as you can see, these principles, well, yeah, they were inspired by the challenges of training researchers. They offer incredibly practical, powerful tools for anyone looking to elevate their thinking, their problem solving across, well, pretty much any field.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully this deep dive has given everyone listening some real food for thought, some actionable insights without, feeling totally overwhelmed by it all. So here's maybe a final question to ponder. How could consciously focusing on just one of these 7 principles in your current work, or maybe a challenge you're facing right now, how could that lead to unexpected breakthroughs?
That's a great question. Think about which of these super secrets really resonates most strongly with you right now. Which one feels like it could have the most immediate positive impact in your situation?
Yeah.
That might be a really good starting point for your own exploration. Just pick one and run with it for a bit.
Because ultimately, the journey to becoming a more effective thinker, it's a continuous process, right? Learning, applying, refining these kinds of fundamental principles. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. You know that feeling when you want to get smart on something fast? Like you need the core knowledge without getting lost in the weeds? That's what we're all about here, taking a deep dive into fascinating stuff and pulling out the essential insights just for you.
Exactly. We sift through the information so you don't have to. Today, our focus is on something incredibly valuable, how to become a more effective thinker.
Okay.
And the cool thing is, the principles we're exploring aren't just theoretical. They come from real-world efforts to sharpen minds in demanding fields.
That's right. Our deep dive today is inspired by discussions around reforming PhD programs, like how do you really train researchers to think critically?
Yeah, how do you actually do that?
And it turns out the answers to that question are like secret weapons for anyone who wants to tackle tough problems, whether you're strategizing at work or just trying to make sense of, a complex situation.
What's fascinating here is that the very skills we aim to cultivate in advanced research, the ability to analyze deeply, to identify flaws, to innovate, these are the same skills that drive success in business, in tech, really in any field where clear thinking is paramount.
All right. So we've basically boiled down the key ideas into 7 core principles. Think of them as your personal toolkit for supercharging your thinking.
Okay, 7 principles.
We're diving into becoming a master error detective, exploring the wild world of science the real way,
Okay, I like the sound of that one.
being super careful with your experiments, thinking about how your work helps everyone,